Hello, and welcome to the SCPa Works Case Notes training session. The title of today's training session is Creating and Maintaining Case Notes in CWDS. The contents of this training session are directly related to the SCPa Works Case Note Policy number P-34-11.23. Today's training focuses on the purpose and importance of case notes. The contents of this training session can be referenced throughout SCPa Works programmatic policies to include the SCPa Works case note policy as mentioned on the previous slide, number P-34-11.23. CWDS serves as a great resource for all Title I administration and operations surrounding WIOA programming. CWDS 2.0 Case Notes Best Practices, the PA Career Link System Procedural Manual, and CWDS Guidance for WIOA Title I-B programs are resources that all vendors should be utilizing. SCPa Works Case Note Guidance also applies to the TANF Youth Development Program and the EARN staff within the SCPa Works service area. All of the CWDS training resources are found under the Help tab in CWDS. Case notes are a vital part of documenting a participant's journey through receiving Title I benefits and services. All aspects of service delivery must be recorded in CWDS. Case notes are the chronological records of interactions, observations, and actions involving a WIOA participant. Case notes tell the story of a participant's experience and serve as a record of everything that happened with a participant during their participation under the WIOA program, and this includes the follow-up after exit. Case managers, intake specialists, business services consultants, training specialists, career advisors, and talent engagement specialists must document a record of interacting with individuals to assess skills, identify vocational interests, remove barriers to education and employment, and ultimately place eligible participants into long-term sustainable employment. Subrecipient staff are expected to adequately listen and respond appropriately to WIOA participants. This includes TANF participants and EARN participants as well, providing them access to resources, tools, and skills to help them obtain employment, taking into account existing barriers and accurately documenting in CWDS the activities associated with these interactions, including action steps taken with the participant, as well as future steps that are anticipated in the journey. Subrecipients need to ensure that activity is documented between the case manager and the participant, illustrating that progressive steps are taken toward fulfilling the participant's vocational needs and goals. Case notes serve as a record of accountability for the case manager and the service provider organization. Case notes also provide continuity of service in the instance of a change in the case manager or the need for an adjacent department or staff member to facilitate the vocational activities or benefits. Subrecipients must ensure that case notes record the details of services and advice provided to the participant. Case notes must document the client's participation in activities and progress. Case notes always capture nuances regarding factors affecting eligibility and other information of note. Case notes justify services that are recommended and potentially provided. Case notes provide a focal point for monitoring service delivery's progression and effectiveness. Case notes protect the case manager and organization from potential legal issues. Case notes provide a narrative supporting allowable costs in alignment with 2 CFR 200 cost principles. Exemplary case notes lead to effective case management. Effective case management requires direct and regular communication with the participant. Case notes should document a chronological history of contact with the participant, tracking what has occurred in the case. Case notes record concisely and accurately the information conveyed by the participant, requests made by the participant, and information provided by the case manager, and the employment plans mutually agreed upon. Quality case notes help prevent misunderstandings and ease the resolution of conflicts in service. Case notes must capture services and present the current situation of a participant. Case notes provide sequential tracking and reporting of participant contact and progress to build the story. Case notes link services to the individual's deficiencies and barriers. Case notes provide the story behind revised employment plans. Case notes increase accountability to allow for oversight and monitoring. Case notes fulfill an ethical requirement of helping participants. Case notes also assist other employment specialists and partners in helping the participant. In the SCPa Work Service region, which is the South Central Pennsylvania region, case notes must be entered within 5 calendar days from the event, contact, attempt, correspondence, service, or otherwise. If a case note is created after the allowed 5 days, it must explain in detail why the 5-day policy was not followed. Again, just to reiterate, if a case note is created after the allowed 5 days, it must explain why the 5-day policy was not followed. Case notes are required to include the date, method of contact, staff members' names and the names of other relevant individuals that are involved in the scenario, location, which could be a CAP site or a PA CareerLink site in the South Central Pennsylvania region, and a reason for the meeting or communication or contact with the participant, including a description of discussion points, measurable details to include a description of the desired or intended outcome, barriers or resolutions, action plans, goals or next steps, completion dates, and an impact towards meeting an IEP or an ISS objective. Case notes must be created for services entered into CWDS. This is a must. The case notes must demonstrate the amount of contact a professional has with their participants and the level of service being provided to a participant. The frequency of case notes should be at a minimum once every 30 days, in addition to the entry of services, IEP updates, and additional contact or scenarios that have occurred with the participant, the employer, and or the training provider involved in the participant's case. Case notes need to capture action items, observations, thoughts, and duration following a meeting or call with the participant as soon as possible to ensure accuracy. This includes the documentation of new test scores, a job interview, a period of absence, a workshop attendance, and so forth. Case note entries should be sequential, telling a story that a compliance officer, a colleague, a leadership team member, and other staff can read clearly and understand. Case notes need to be clear and concise, written for the benefit of others as if you would not be available for consultation. Case notes have to remain factual, concise, thorough, relevant, and logical, applying well-organized and well-written statements using clear language. Vendors need to avoid using slang, jargon, opinions, judgments, or generalizations in case notes. Vendors should use good grammar and spelling in a case note and should not leave any topic or concern to the imagination or interpretation of the reader. From sequential case note to case note, there should not be gaps in either time or information. Case notes should reflect the participant's work in progress throughout the program. The case notes and the rest of the file and the data entered into CWDS should match and reflect the same information as the test score, start date, revisions, supportive services, and so forth. Workforce staff are required to use CWDS case notes to fully document and explain any identified system process or data entry error that impacts program administration. Case notes serve as the official record of how an issue was identified, corrected, and prevented from reoccurring, and must be entered in a clear, timely, and detailed manner. When a system error occurs, or an administrative error occurs, or a finding is discovered, leadership staff must immediately take corrective action and document the issue using step-by-step case notes that include the following components. A description of the error is required. The case note must clearly explain the error, including what occurred, how it was identified, and which requirement, policy, or CWDS field was impacted. The description should be factual and specific, avoiding vague language. The cause of the error also must be detailed in the case note. Staff must identify whether the issue resulted from a system limitation, a process breakdown, or data entry oversight. When applicable, the case note should note contributing factors such as timing, staff transition, a misunderstanding of a policy, or CWDS functionality. A case note must also contain what corrective action is going to be taken by the subrecipient. The case note must document in sequential order the exact steps taken to correct the error in CWDS or within program operations. This includes the date of correction, fields or records that have been updated, supporting documentation reviewed or uploaded, and confirmation that the correction aligns with policy and guidance. The case note must also contain the current status and outcome. Staff must indicate whether the issue has been fully resolved or if additional action is pending. If the issue is resolved, the case note should clearly state the data, system record, or process that is now accurate and compliant. Finally, the case note must illustrate preventative measures and next steps. To ensure continuous improvement, staff must document any anticipated next steps designed to prevent future occurrences of the same error. This may include staff training, process changes, additional internal reviews, or adjustments to workflow or data verification processes. All case notes must be entered promptly, written in complete sentences, and detailed enough to allow a reviewer or monitor to clearly understand what happened, what was done to correct it, and how future errors will be avoided. Accurate and thorough case notes are essential to maintaining WIOA compliance, program integrity, and accountability within CWDS. Case notes should adhere to anti-discrimination and conflict of interest standards. Case notes should not contain information that does not directly apply to the participant's IEP or ISS, a participant's medical history, or a medical or mental health diagnosis. Case notes must be written with the knowledge that the case note will be audited or reviewed for compliance. Information that could lead to the disclosure of the specific medical condition or disability of a participant cannot be entered in CWDS case notes. Case notes may state in a general statement that a medical condition or disability exists but cannot provide information describing the condition or include the name of the condition. The case note should summarize that there are generalized barriers to employment instead of listing the specific sensitive information. Notations of confidential information can be included in a case note indicating that confidential files are kept in a locked cabinet away from the general physical files in the office and managed by the lead case manager. The subject line of a case note should include the name of the service provided, or if no specific service is provided, a summary line of the action that occurred to prompt a case note. The body of the case note must describe each service or the action that occurred and include elements mentioned earlier in this training. A background statement of required documentation and participant information can include eligibility details, work history, assessment, barriers, career research, referral dates, and service provider or agency names. The reason of the case note must be clear and must describe the main purpose of the meeting with the participant and the established goal of the meeting. Subrecipients are to include specific, measurable, observable goals in each case note and the participant's ability to attain these goals. An observation statement in a case note describes what was witnessed during the meeting or what was observed through a phone call. This statement can include participants' general attitude, progress, willingness to take steps toward a goal, and eagerness to move on to the next stage of the programming. Subrecipients should ensure that the case note includes the action taken during the meeting and if barriers, changes, or other issues were discussed. The vendor should also include detailed mention of supportive services and program referrals when applicable. Vendors should also make sure that the case note details what the meeting achieved or did not achieve. This statement should include a professional assessment of progress, goal statuses, service exits or outcomes, and placements. Each case note should document what actions the participant and staff will complete before the next contact. Include the date of the time of the next scheduled meeting and if the meeting will take place in person, virtually, or by telephone. Case notes must indicate a service code entry or hard exit from a program and chronicle all aspects of supportive services and referrals for services necessary for the success of a training or employment activity. Case notes do tell the story of the participant's experience while being served by the workforce system, but also explain step by step everything that occurs to a participant in relation to the benefits received in the services that were delivered. Case notes need to detail the vendor staff involvement in the progression of the participant through the programs. Case notes must explain in detail the concerns of the participant and the staff, including what the proposed solution to the concern is, as well as a description and anticipated date of the expected outcome. Case notes should contain details that would help another workforce professional assist the participant. Case notes must also be entered, again, within 5 calendar days from the event. Contact, attempt, correspondence, service, or otherwise. It is considered a finding in CWDS if a case note was not entered within 5 days of an event, contact, attempt, correspondence, service, or otherwise. The following slides provide sample case note scenarios. Intake and enrollment case notes are imperative to the start of a new case and enable all staff members to understand the barriers to training and employment that an individual is experiencing while being provided the services for programming. This type of case note also provides insight to the basic career services that were provided prior to the start of the subsidized training or employment. SCPa Works requires all case notes to include a next step statement comprised of the participant's next stage in the workforce system journey and the role of the career advisor in this next step. Case notes must contain measurable data, dates, and timeline to indicate the continuity of service delivery. Case notes are a touch point for all activities surrounding a Title I participant who is on the journey to a long-term self-sustaining employment position through the support and benefit of our subrecipient staff. If a case note details a problem with the participant, service, or training, or a conflict in programming, the case note must also detail the solution to the problem. If the participant is not receiving payments in a timely manner for a registered apprenticeship experience, for example, the career advisor or case manager must notify the business services team to contact the employer so that the problem can be resolved immediately. The anticipated outcome must be included in the case note with the next step statement indicating that the participant, the career advisor or case manager, and the business services consultant plans to do on what date and for what expected outcome. Weekly follow-up phone calls with participants are pivotal in understanding the low or high performance of a participant while they are engaged in on-the-job learning, paid work experience, or a registered apprenticeship. Incentives, stipends, and supportive services are all reason for detailed case notes that explain what happened, why it happened, and when it happened. What was the solution? How was support provided? And what is the next step in this participant's journey to long-term self-sustaining employment? Questions and concerns regarding the SCPa Works case note policy or this case note training session can be directed to the SCPa Works staff members on this slide. For programs concerns, please contact Judy Santiago or Shauna Ventris. For compliance concerns, please contact Courtney Day. For equal opportunity or discrimination concerns, please contact our EO officer, Whitney Matthews. Questions concerning policy can be directed to Sarah Ann Miller. On behalf of the staff at SCPa Works, we thank you for attending this training session.